Saturday, October 7, 2023, Gaza militants, primarily Hamas, launched a large-scale surprise attack on Israel. The attack, which involved a barrage of rockets launched from the blockaded Gaza Strip into nearby Israeli towns, took both Israelis and the international community by surprise. The attack has had significant consequences, including the loss of hundreds of lives among Israelis. It has also marked the eruption of a new conflict between Hamas and Israel. In response to the Hamas attack, Israeli forces launched airstrikes on various targets in Gaza, including housing blocks, tunnels, a mosque, and homes of Hamas officials. These airstrikes resulted in the tragic loss of over 300 lives in Gaza. The attack by Hamas was part of what they called Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. This operation involved a shocking assault within Israel itself, resulting in casualties and the taking of hostages. The exact details of this operation are still being analyzed and investigated. The situation in the region is evolving rapidly, and the international community is closely monitoring developments. The United Nations has called for an immediate ceasefire, and the United States is working to de-escalate the situation. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been a source of instability and suffering in the Middle East for decades. Recent developments in the conflict have been both promising and troubling, highlighting the complex and multifaceted nature of this long-standing dispute. One of the most significant developments in 2023 has been the alarming surge in violence. Both Israeli forces and Palestinian militants have been involved in a series of deadly attacks, resulting in hundreds of casualties. This escalation in hostilities has raised concerns about the future of the conflict and the prospects for peace. Amidst this violence, however, there have been glimmers of hope. In February 2023, Israel and the Palestinian Authority jointly committed to working together to reduce violence. This marked a notable shift from the years of discord between the two parties, and it offered a rare glimpse of cooperation towards a peaceful resolution. Another important development has been the continued expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank. This expansion is considered illegal under international law and is a major obstacle to the two-state solution. By further encroaching on Palestinian territory, these settlements make it increasingly difficult to establish a viable Palestinian state. The United States' unwavering support for Israel remains a significant factor in the conflict. The U.S. is Israel's closest ally and provides billions of dollars in military aid each year. This support has been criticized by Palestinians and human rights groups, who argue that it enables Israel to sustain its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. The ongoing war in Ukraine has also introduced a new dimension to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The global conflict has triggered a food crisis that has disproportionately impacted Palestinians, who are already struggling economically. Additionally, the war in Ukraine has diverted international attention away from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, making it more difficult to achieve a peaceful resolution. In conclusion, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains a complex and challenging issue. Recent developments have been both positive and negative, highlighting the need for a nuanced and multifaceted approach to peacebuilding. Understanding the intricate dynamics of the conflict and the various factors at play is essential for developing effective strategies to resolve this long-standing dispute. The Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories is a complex and protracted conflict with significant legal implications. The United States' unwavering support for Israel plays a pivotal role in shaping the legal landscape of this contentious issue. The Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949 is the bedrock of international law governing the Israeli occupation of Palestine. This convention explicitly classifies the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip as occupied territories and imposes clear-cut obligations on the occupying power, Israel. These obligations include the humane treatment of civilian populations, the preservation of critical infrastructure, and the utmost respect for human rights. Additionally, the Fourth Geneva Convention emphasizes the temporary nature of occupation and prohibits any attempts at colonization. The application of the Fourth Geneva Convention to the Israeli-occupied territories has been a source of controversy. Some argue that the convention does not apply because the conflict is perceived as a civil war rather than an international armed conflict. Others assert that the convention is universally applicable to all armed conflicts, irrespective of their international or internal nature. The United Nations Security Council has played a pivotal role in addressing the conflict by adopting a series of resolutions. Resolutions such as 242, 338, and 2672 explicitly call for an Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories. However, the United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has frequently exercised its veto power to block resolutions censuring Israel's actions, thereby preventing the imposition of sanctions. The International Court of Justice (ICJ) has also weighed in on the conflict. In 2004, the ICJ issued an advisory opinion that unequivocally condemned the construction of the separation wall in the West Bank as a violation of international law. The ICJ concluded that the Palestinian territories occupied by Israel fall under humanitarian law and that the construction of the wall carries illegal consequences. The legal framework surrounding the Israeli occupation of Palestine is complex and multifaceted. The United States' unwavering support for Israel plays a significant role in shaping the legal landscape of this conflict. While the Fourth Geneva Convention, UN resolutions, and ICJ advisory opinions provide a critical framework for addressing the issue, the United States' diplomatic maneuvering has obstructed the implementation of this framework. Further, Israel's defiance of international law and the absence of binding enforcement mechanisms hinder the pursuit of justice and accountability. In conclusion, the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories remains a contentious and unresolved issue with profound legal implications. The United States' role in this conflict is significant, and its diplomatic actions have a significant impact on the legal landscape. The international community and civil society organizations must continue to exert pressure on Israel to comply with international law and hold it accountable for its actions. Only then can the path towards a just and lasting peace in the region be paved. Expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank is a complex and controversial issue with far-reaching legal, moral, and political implications. Legally, the expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank is widely considered to be a violation of international law. The Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949, a cornerstone of humanitarian law, prohibits an occupying power from transferring its civilian population into occupied territory. The establishment of Israeli settlements in the West Bank is therefore a clear breach of this convention. Morally, the expansion of Israeli settlements is also problematic. It displaces Palestinians from their land and denies them access to natural resources. It also undermines the prospects for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is widely regarded as the most viable framework for resolving the conflict. The use of armed violence by the Palestinian government, including militant factions, also raises complex legal and moral issues. On the one hand, such actions may be considered a breach of international law, especially in the context of the use of force. On the other hand, international law also recognizes the right to self-defense. From a moral standpoint, the resort to armed violence raises ethical concerns about the legitimacy of resistance and the safeguarding of civilian rights. Violent actions have the potential to inflict suffering and cause civilian casualties. It is important to note that the issue of sovereignty and accountability in this conflict is highly polarized, with different perspectives arising from political, cultural, and historical contexts. The pursuit of a peaceful and equitable resolution to this enduring conflict remains a formidable challenge for the international community, fueling sustained debates concerning the legitimacy and morality of the actions undertaken by all parties involved. In conclusion, the expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank is a complex and challenging issue with far-reaching legal, moral, and political implications. It is important to consider all of these factors when trying to understand and resolve this conflict. The concept of national sovereignty is a complex and multifaceted one with a rich philosophical history. Philosophers have offered a variety of perspectives on the nature of sovereignty and the means by which it is justified. One prominent perspective is Rousseau's social contract theory. Rousseau argued that sovereignty is derived from the general will of the people, who voluntarily relinquish some of their freedoms in exchange for the state's protection. This view emphasizes the legitimacy of sovereignty through the consent of the governed. Liberal political theories also emphasize the importance of individual rights and liberties. They view state sovereignty as justified to the extent that it protects these rights and circumscribes government power. Realist political theories, on the other hand, focus on the importance of state security and national interests. They view sovereignty as justified to the extent that it allows states to maintain their security and achieve their national goals. Cosmopolitanism challenges the conventional notion of national sovereignty, arguing that states should be accountable to a global community. Cosmopolitans believe that sovereignty should be justified by a state's contribution to global welfare welfare, human rights, environmental protection, and social justice. Pluralistic political theories recognize the diversity of groups within states and advocate for sovereignty arrangements that allow these groups to govern themselves autonomously while respecting the rights of all members. Finally, some philosophers argue that sovereignty is justified as an expression of collective identity and solidarity within a specific political community. They believe that individuals have a duty to their community that justifies preserving its sovereignty. In conclusion, the justification of a nation's sovereignty is a complex issue with a variety of philosophical perspectives. These debates are central to political philosophy and inform discussions about the role of the state, human rights, social justice, and global responsibility. The concept of sovereignty remains a fertile ground for philosophical contemplation, where the past, present, and future of political thought converge.